Your one new material for this project is a rolling pin, but you still need your paper placemat, clay, plastic wrap, water, and your clay tools. The rolling pins are meant to roll clay, nothing else. If you misuse the rolling pin, you won't be able to use it at all. First, you need a really good plan in mind of what you're about to create. I'm going to make a butterfly, so I have to make a rectangular prism out of clay and then attach wings to it. Before I roll out my clay, it's helpful for a geometric form to have templates to trace around. So I drew out some rectangles that I'm going to use to make the sides of my rectangular prism. I'm going to cut these out of paper so I can actually trace them on my clay slab. Now I can roll my clay out. You'll have to stand up in order to put enough weight onto your block of clay. What you want to do is use the rolling pin to roll the clay. You are not beating the clay with the rolling pin. That is a misuse of your rolling pin. Just like always, you are going for a finger thick on your clay. No thinner, and definitely not thicker. Now that my clay is the appropriate thickness, I'm going to put my paper template right onto the clay, and I'm going to use it wisely, so I'm going to start at an edge and use my needle tool to trace around the paper template. I had written on my worksheet that I wanted 4 of these, but I didn't account for the actual thickness of the clay. So I'm going to make 2 of these and then make some adjustments to my other 2 sides. What you see me do here is compare my paper template to the thickness of my top and bottom and make my sides that much shorter. When my short side wall is added to the thickness of the top and the bottom, it'll be the height that I originally planned for. Just like always, it's important to wrap up your clay scraps so you can use them later. I want my slab that I rolled out, but my other scraps I don't need. Notice how I wrap everything in my plastic like a burrito. Then I'm going to tuck the extra plastic underneath the clay so it holds it in place. Before I attach my 4 pieces together to make my rectangular prism, I dry fit them together to make sure they're going to go how I plan. Then, just like always, score, slip or add water, and smooth everything together. As I smooth, I can tell I'm going to have a problem where my 2 pieces meet. So I'm going to add a snake there. A snake is a great way to reinforce a seam. I rolled out a small snake of fresh clay, tucked it in the corner where the 2 pieces meet, and now I'm going to smooth that in to help reinforce that area. This is a great technique that you can use anytime when you have 2 pieces to attach and this seems like it's not attaching well. Also, make sure you support the back edge of anything if you're applying pressure on the other side. If you don't, your clay is going to become deformed. So you'll notice that when I'm pushing on one side, my hand is on the other side, making sure that I don't push so hard that something falls apart or breaks. For my 2 end pieces, I'm just going to trace the ends of my actual clay sculpture instead of going off my planned template, just in case my plan didn't meet reality. So I'm going to put my rectangular prism on the slab, trace around it with my needle tool so that I have 2 squares that'll perfectly fit to cap off the ends. Once again, notice how I wrap up my extra clay like a burrito. Little corner over first, sides on top, and then roll all of the rest up in your extra plastic. Now I just have to repeat my clay attaching steps to add my 2 ends. Score both pieces, slip or add water, and then smooth the whole thing together. Once it's done, I'm going to shape my rectangular prism a little bit to try to get it nice and squared off. So you can see my butterfly is almost complete. It needs wings, but before I make those, I have to make sure that I don't leave any trapped air pockets. So on the bottom side of my butter stick, I'm going to poke 2 holes just to be safe, so that it won't later explode in the kiln. You can also use slab construction to make something rounded or cylindrical. For example, if I were to make a cupcake here, I would want a round bottom, but my side, in order to slant out, would end up looking more like a trapezoid. Just like before, unwrap your clay, stand up to put some pressure on your clay, roll the clay with the rolling pin until you have it about a finger thick. I'm going for a long thin piece because I'm making the long thin trapezoid that'll be the side of my cupcake. It would be great if I knew exactly what kind of trapezoid to draw, but I don't. So I'm going to freehand it here by sort of wrapping my clay into a cylinder in the way that I think would look good, and then trimming it so that it ends up making the correct shape that I'm going for. This will take some adjustment, but with some work, I'll get the shape that I wanted. Notice I'm wrapping my extra clay. Then, same as before, score, slip or add water, and smooth the seams together to make one solid piece. Finally, I need to trim the top surface of my cupcake so it's nice and flat. So I'm going to try my best to keep my needle tool perfectly horizontal and go all the way around at one even height. So one part is not higher and one part is not lower. Now my cupcake needs a bottom in order to be a container. Stuff can't just fall out. So I'm going to take my extra scrap clay and roll out a new slab. The extra piece I have from making the side is not going to be enough to cover the bottom. So I'm going to have to put this back into a new chunk of clay and roll it out to a finger thick so I can use it. Just like with my stick of butter, I'm just going to trace around the bottom edge so I know that it's going to fit perfectly. But make sure that you hold your needle tool at the appropriate angle. You don't want to dig underneath whatever you're tracing around. Try to keep it straight up and down or slightly angled in my case, like the sides of my cupcake. Now I can score, slip, and smooth everything together. But once again, I've noticed that the inside seam doesn't seem like it's going to work nicely. So I'm going to roll out a snake that I can coil in the bottom of my cupcake to help attach the two pieces together much more securely than just smoothing it the way that they are. If you can't get your fingers into a space to smooth something, use your tools. They are very helpful if you use them correctly to get into small spaces. Now to make the domed top of my cupcake, we can go back to your very first skill, a pinch pot. I'm going to take all of my extra scrap clay rolled into a ball, and then I'm going to do the same pinch pot steps you already learned. Once it's round like a ball, I'm going to push my thumbs into the middle and support the outsides with my fingertips so I can gradually shape it into a dome, sort of like frosting piled on top of a cupcake. To finish off my cupcake, I have to actually make some sculpting. So I'm going to press in my knife to make cupcake wrinkles. And then I would also need to sculpt the frosting on the top. But you can see how you can use a slab to make just about any form you want to.